heard about innovation and creativity, but how do we cultivate it in our classrooms and more importantly in our students? To help answer your questions, we are very pleased to welcome John Cow to What Works Makers. John is not only a specialist in the fields of innovation and creativity in education, he is the creator of a unique online system known as EdgeMakers that aims to give students the competitive edge in the world of work. His mission is to empower young people and increase their ability to succeed in life. So each of you should have a sunflower token, and there's a feedback box outside. So we'd like you to just, give us your feedback whether you think EdgeMakers will fly or not. Without further ado, now please welcome John to the stage.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you to KHDA and the KHDA team, and to all of you for making your time available this morning. I've been working in the innovation field, broadly defined, for about 30 years. I was a professor at Harvard Business School for 14 years, where I started the innovation curriculum. And I've had a lot of different kinds of experiences, ranging from starting companies in Silicon Valley, producing Hollywood feature films, producing plays on Broadway, becoming a Yamaha performing artist, because I feel that music is a great metaphor in a way for the innovation process. And so over these 30 years, I've learned a lot about not only how innovation works, but how to create compelling learning experiences for innovation. So with that as the background, my mission these days is to take that knowledge and to make it as widely available as possible. I've been a teacher, as you just heard. My mother was a teacher, my father was a teacher, my grandfather was a teacher. I'm on the board of trustees of the Riverdale Country School in New York, so I know a little bit about the backstage of secondary education as well. And so I want to tell you about EdgeMakers in the context of education in the age of innovation. I want to tell you about EdgeMakers, and I also want to tell you a little bit about why I'm here, because obviously I believe that there is some relevance that EdgeMakers may bring to Dubai, to education in Dubai, and to the good work that you all are doing. It's the age of innovation. I know many of you may come later to the longer talk that I'm going to give, and I'm going to go into more detail about why this is the age of innovation and why innovation is important, what it is, maybe even do some illustration with this wonderful piano that our hosts have arranged for. But we have a more kind of compact time frame this morning in this session, so my plan is to spend no more than about 20 minutes presenting to you, but then to use the balance of our time to have a conversation, to answer your questions about EdgeMakers, about innovation education, and for me to learn from you, because you're in the field, you're doing the work, and I have something new that I would like to offer that I think might be of value. So it is the age of innovation because everything is changing. You know, this famous piece of art by the Japanese woodblock artist Hokusai, the famous Great Wave, shows the overpowering force of change. The boat here seemingly out of control, the little people huddled on the back of the ship, the centerpiece, Mount Fuji, usually the center of this kind of Japanese art, way off to the side. So, to quote a bit of Shakespeare, the times are out of joint, and we need innovation in order to come up with new solutions to a world that is increasingly disrupted. The ruler of Dubai understands this very well. There is a national campaign to make Dubai one of the most innovative countries in the world over the next 7, I guess now 6 years. And he says innovation is the driver of our progress, and governments and business that fail to innovate will go backwards. pretty clear statement. But there's a problem with all of the interest in innovation that is happening around the world. I know because I have advised about 10 countries on national innovation policy, including Finland and Singapore and other countries seen to be leaders in innovation, as well as participating in a US-China dialogue on innovation collaboration in the G2. And the big gap is this. It's easy to say that you want innovation and that innovation is great and it's important. But what I like to say is if you want innovation for real, you need to have people who know how to do innovation. And if you want people who know how to do innovation, you have to help them learn how to do it. Because otherwise it's a random process. You know, you get a Steve Jobs who's an orphan who has a somewhat dysfunctional developmental history and accidentally, decides to start a revolution in personal computers. It's societally random. But how do you create innovation as the beating heart of the learning experience of this entire new generation of young people who already get the fact that innovation is important? All of the studies of Generation Z, the beginnings of these studies of Generation Z show young people born after the year 2000, if you want to take that as the definition of Generation Z, know that the world has a lot of problems, know that they want to express their creativity, are very interested in becoming entrepreneurs. And the question is, how do we help them to accomplish those goals? Well, schools are where young people come to learn. And schools are the answer, but we also have a challenge. There's this old saying that if a doctor from 100 years ago came to an emergency room of today, they wouldn't know what was going on. And I can say this with some authority because I have an MD from Yale Medical School, among other things. And I know that if I'm in a hospital today, based on, let's see, having graduated in 1977, I won't have a clue about what's going on. But if a teacher from 100 years ago comes to a classroom today, to most classrooms today, and sees the architecture of the room, the layout, the equipment, et cetera, they would probably feel right at home. So the issue for us is how to match what students are learning today with what they need in order to thrive in the 21st century, in the world as we understand it. And it begs the question of what is the purpose of education? Is the purpose of education to get a job, to know what's on the test, to get into college, to get your ticket punched, to, in America, swallow up the Common Core standards, be prepared to compete in a global economy, et cetera? I mean, what is the purpose of education? Oh, by the way, maybe we should be thinking about helping young people make their dreams come true, learn how to express the desire to create the future and to fulfill their potential. So I think we're on the cusp of a very interesting period of self-reflection, which is going on in many countries as they, from a policy perspective, start to reevaluate what's inside the curriculum, what the learning experience needs to be in relation to what society needs of young people and what young people need from society to go forward. We're at this cusp also because we're at this kind of transition from an industrial era to an innovation era. And in an industrial era, you need standardization, you need control systems, you need structure, you need authority, you need a certain amount of uniformity, you need rationality in order to plan. And many of those values are bound up with more traditional approaches to education. Whereas in an innovation era, what we're looking towards is creativity, is innovation, the ability to take creativity and generate value, entrepreneurship, design thinking, many different fields. And so in an innovation era, the approach has to be about empowerment, personalization, facilitation, setting personalized agendas, celebrating diversity, and improvisation. So instead of the sheet music, this is a little foreshadowing of later on in the second talk, instead of playing sheet music, we have to learn how to improvise. We have to learn how to play jazz if we're going to be effective innovators. So let me tell you a bit about where EdgeMakers fits into all of this. About 3 years ago, I decided that I wanted to devote this next episode of my life to taking this knowledge of innovation, such as it is, that I've accumulated, and repackaging it into a learning experience for young people to be able to practice innovation, to actually do innovation effectively. And this is a little bit of an overview of what motivated us to start EdgeMakers some 3 years ago.
We live in a world characterized by increasing uncertainty, unpredictability, and turbulence. Everywhere it seems, we see so-called wicked problems that are so complex as to seem virtually insoluble. The environment, security, health and disease, energy efficiency, the list goes on. In order to get the future we want, we must shape it with creativity and innovation to make new things come to life. Enter EdgeMakers. Our mission is to empower a new generation who want to direct their creativity and entrepreneurial talents to make a difference. We support young innovators who want to express their creativity in a project, in a business, or in an initiative to make the world a better place. And we believe that the passion and talent of young people is one of the most underutilized resources on the planet. EdgeMakers is a platform that provides knowledge, tools, and inspiring examples, but is equally about taking action and connecting you to a like-minded community. We enable you to find the competitive edge that produces new ideas and generates opportunity. EdgeMakers, are you one? Do you know one?
So I could talk in a theoretical way about EdgeMakers, but I also want to introduce you to some of the young people that we've been working with. So Adora Spitak is a Edge mentor now because she's actually a 16-year-old freshman at Berkeley College whose personal goal is to become president of the United States. But our experience with her was very positive, and here's what she has to say about EdgeMakers.
Hi, I'm Adora Spitak, and I'm an EdgeMaker. Being an EdgeMaker to me means figuring out that life is about way more than just getting from point A to point B. It's about everyone you meet and everything you change along the way. For me, I think that as babies, we're born into a world that we really seek to impact. We mess around and we try to contribute a verse to the powerful play, to quote a poem that I love. And I think that being an EdgeMaker is all about that, making sure that you leave a footprint a little more tangible than just the very standard going from grade to grade, going from school to school, going from job to job. Truly, it's about going from impact to impact and making sure that you touch many, many people along the way.
So you can see this linkage between innovation, learning, and purpose, the notion that there's a hunger on the part of this emerging generation to take a place in society and to have positive effects. So this reflects our mission. Our mission is to empower young people worldwide to become highly effective innovators and thus make what Steve Jobs famously called a dent in the universe, to have an impact and way ahead of schedule. You know, these days there are 15-year-olds doing social movements with social media. There are 16-year-old life scientists that are making discoveries. There are kids around the world are doing amazing things that are actually grounded in purpose. And this is one of the big themes of EdgeMakers. And how are we going to do this? Well, for the last 3 years, we have created what we consider to be the world's definitive learning experience, curriculum, pile of learning assets for innovation. And it combines curriculum with what we call Luminary, which is our digital learning ecology. I'll say a little bit more about that in just a moment. And it addresses this innovation gap that I talked about earlier, which is helping young people to learn about how to do innovation so that they can go out and make innovation happen at a societal scale. In terms of the nuts and bolts of the curriculum architecture, there are 5 core courses or subject matters. It all begins with ideas. So we focus on creativity to start off with. Creativity at the level of the individual, creativity at the level of interpersonal relationships. You know, how do you work with someone to enhance creative results? Creativity in teams, creativity in organizations, creativity in societies. What is it about certain societies or urban environments that makes them more or less creative? We then look at three disciplines that we consider to be amplifiers of creativity. So story, narrative. You know, how do you tell a story that activates an idea, that makes an idea persuasive and compelling? And story or narrative is key to change making, to changing a perspective on things, right? If you have a story, you can motivate changes in behavior, changes in perceptions. Without a story, you don't have very much. So story is an amplifier of ideas. Digital fluency. We have a very groundbreaking body of pedagogical assets, not for digital literacy, which is what the tools are, you know, social media, internet-based tools, but fluency is about how you use the tools to achieve effects in the world, to make change. Again, you have an idea, but you may need a digital strategy to amplify that idea so you can influence citizens, customers, partners, friends, whatever. Pardon me. And then finally, design, which I know you've heard a lot about. Designers know how to put a form on ideas, how to develop ideas through prototyping and iteration, how to ground ideas in understanding of user experience. So designers also know a lot about amplifying ideas. And then finally, the last core discipline is entrepreneurs and startups, because entrepreneurs are the people who have the characteristics of being able to drive an idea towards the realization of value, right? So innovation to me is not just ideas, it's about the whole process of originating ideas, developing them, and realizing value from them. One of the reasons why the EdgeMakers curriculum is, I think, so valuable is because it overcomes a lot of the almost theological debates between entrepreneurship faculty and design thinking experts and ideation experts. And let me just give you a little bit of intellectual history. The creativity field really comes from psychology. You know, the brainstorming people, Synectics, Adam Osborne, they were all psychologists. Design thinking is originated from industrial science and from industrial design, where design thinking is about taking those principles and making them more strategic, right? And then entrepreneurship is a sort of a management discipline, very clinically based on studies of people who are entrepreneurs. Everybody's looking for intellectual market share. And so, you know, there's a lot of conceptual confusion out there. You know, if I were in your shoes, I'd be saying, okay, I get this idea of 21st century skills. Should I be doing a lean startup course or a design thinking course or a creativity skills course? You know, what about digital? And what we have tried to do is to basically integrate all of these disciplines into a fabric, a unified fabric that we, of course, you know, call modestly EdgeMakers. We've also created some elective courses that drive deeply into subject matter. So we have a sustainability, innovation, and social justice course that we're just about to finish, that we're doing in partnership with the University of Arizona and its famous Biosphere, which is one of the most important sustainability laboratories in the world. And we envision other deep dives into big, wicked problems as raw material for looking at the innovation agenda. So just nuts and bolts, we have a full high school curriculum, so EdgeMakers can be taught in a school. We have 150 lessons over multiple years that is an integrated curriculum. But then we have an accelerated high school curriculum, which could also be an alternative learning center, like a Saturday program model, which consists of two courses, EdgeMakers Essentials, which is kind of the greatest hits, and Digital Fluency with 30 lessons each. pardon me. We also have a higher education course that has been piloted now in the United States and in Brazil, EdgeMakers Essentials in Digital Fluency, and I'll describe in a moment our approach to self-directed learning. We have a teacher development program. We're very excited about the Edge Teacher program because we think there's a hunger, we've seen a hunger on the part of teachers to incorporate edge-making skills into their teaching repertoire. I mean, getting students to present more effectively, collaborate, use design tools, and be able to orchestrate the project management of more complex purpose-driven projects obviously has applicability in a lot of areas besides just narrowly edge makers. And finally, we're deployed in the United States, Colombia, Brazil, and India currently. We're looking at other parts of the world. China looms large on our horizon. And obviously, we're very interested in this part of the world as well, and that's why I'm here. The other fact that I want to put before you is that and I'll go into more detail about this later on in the morning, but there are really three modes of learning that we think are important. Academic learning would be reading a book about playing the piano. Practice-based learning Practice-based learning would actually be about sitting down and playing the piano. Community engagement or social engagement would be about playing the piano in a social setting where it has meaning. And there's learning from all three of these, and EdgeMakers partakes of all three of these. So let me then move on to tell you a little bit about our digital strategy. Luminary is what we call a digital learning ecology. And in a way, it's kind of like a travel agency for learning journeys. So we've spent about $3 million on a digital environment that allows for a school to deploy our assets digitally, but also allows for a self-directed learner to be able to take the journey themselves. And Luminary is the next level, which is a set of algorithms, a set of architectures that allows a learner at any level to come into our system, almost like coming into a travel agency, and having a customized, personalized journey through our ocean of pedagogical assets to allow for an adaptive learning experience that is completely customized for them as an individual. However, this approach to the Luminary experience can be used by a school, it can be used by a sponsor who's interested in a particular line of capability development, it can be used to crowdsource input. And we're very, very excited about this because we think that this notion of having a personalization engine that allows for self-directed learning is going to be a rather disruptive innovation in education, generally speaking. It also means that this is, in a way, the school of the future because Luminary is mobile native. It does not depend on the traditional assets of a learning environment in order to have a profound impact. So, given that I wanted to do this in 25 minutes and we are at minute 23, I'm going to close my formal remarks just with a short piece of video from Brianna, who's another one of our edge-making students. And this is actually quite interesting. About a year and a half ago, we were thinking about commissioning a short film to talk about edge makers. And in fact, you saw it at the beginning. It was that animated film about wicked problems and so on. But Brianna, who was an intern in our office at the time, came in to the office on Monday and she said, and I quote, "I heard you were trying to make a film about edge makers. I made one for you over the weekend. Would you like to see it?" And so this is the film that she put together about the edge makers experience.
Hi, I'm Brianna. I decided to challenge myself and make an animation about edgemakers.com. I wanted to describe edge makers and give people a good idea on how to use it. I really hope you enjoy it.
Edgemakers.com is where you can take creativity, critical thinking, entrepreneurship, invention, and design, then make something substantial out of them. Being an edgemaker means becoming someone who's willing to use the skills and knowledge that they have to better their life, community, or maybe even world. No longer are teens going to be a mere speck in the world. No, they're going to become something much greater. It's about becoming people part of this world like anyone else, and not wait till you're 18, 20, or even 30. It's time to contribute to this world. Age is insignificant. Edgemakers helps kids take something as simple as an idea and make it into something substantial, something they'll see grow and develop over time on the site to become something much more. The Edgemakers community helps you become part of something greater than yourself. Edgemakers is where you can find a community of people willing to collaborate, give feedback, and support throughout a journey. Not only will you be able to share your very own projects, you'll get a chance to see what others are doing beyond just one nation. It will allow you to see inspirational projects developing across the world. Edgemakers is where you can find a new way of learning. It will provide the skills and knowledge to take what you already know and make use of it. We're living in a world where tools like the internet are more significant than anything. We can't wait for the education system to catch up to what we need right now. And it's important that teens make use of all the world has to offer. Edgemakers.com is a tool anyone can use to really do something incredible.
So I'm here in Dubai to explore the feasibility of launching Edgemakers here, and ultimately extending it into other parts of the region, translating it into Arabic, localizing it, etc. It is currently available in the 4 countries I mentioned earlier. So this is in a way a market sensing kind of activity to get a feeling of the pulse and what the level of interest is. I believe that Edgemakers is very relevant to this whole notion of a national innovation strategy for Dubai. I think that Luminary can also be a very important ecology, if you will, for putting together a movement of young edge-making learners in this country and in connected ways around the world. And it's especially interesting in the context of the forthcoming expo, where the voice of youth is going to be very prominent. So thank you very much for listening to my prepared remarks. We have ample time for your questions and comments. I would like to learn from you in terms of what you see the opportunity here as being, what strikes a chord for you in what I've shared. And I'll be around for much of the day, so we can continue this conversation informally as well. By the way, Edgemakers is edgemakers.com, very easy. I'm John at edgemakers.com, so I'm easy to find. So thank you very much, and let me hear your questions. The lights are shining in my eyes, but I'm happy to answer any questions or entertain any comments. And I think there's a microphone roving around, but if you want to say your question, I'll repeat it. Right here.
Good morning. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. I am Mr. Mazhar English Language School. I am the principal there. First of all, I congratulate Dr. Abdullah Karam for providing such a splendid opportunity to learn, share and transform this kind of information. At the outset, I would like to draw your attention regarding the first prerequisite of Edgemakers, that is pertaining to the innovative narratives, because this society is multiracial, multicultural society. And you have to be very meticulous and very particular when you are addressing the concerns of different nationalities, because all the people have different kind of mindsets. And for the narrative, it has to be appealing, it has to be convincing, and it has to be affirmative, so that you can achieve all the objectives for the Edgemakers. I thank you.
So it's a very good point, and I'm interested in Dubai because it is so multinational and multicultural and diverse, because it's a good proxy for the world as we know it. And you're right, I mean, stories have to resonate across cultures, across geographies, and crafting those kinds of stories is an art form unto itself. Sorry, it's a little dry in Dubai, so I'm having a little cough here. But other questions? Silence does not mean agreement, by the way, so I'm hoping that I'll get some more questions from the audience.
Well, good morning. I'm a student in SAIS Dubai campus, and I want to ask you, as a student, how can I help? How can I show what is EdgeMaker, not only through, let's say, yeah, that's a question.
Okay, well, I love that question, and we do actually get that question quite often. One immediate way you could help and become involved is to blog for us. So if you go to the edgemakers.com website, you'll see bloggers from around the world, young edge makers who are talking about conditions in their country, wicked problems, innovation opportunities, and things of this kind. And you could actually be very helpful in terms of being the voice of the region in our global community. That would be one. The second would be to help us understand how to best position ourselves to be of greatest service to young people in Dubai across the whole spectrum of schools. You know, just judging by what's going on outside there, there's a huge amount of creativity. And Dubai tends to be a country that tries a lot of new things out. But then the question becomes, what's beyond that? You know, how do you create a learning experience that has depth and richness to it in the innovation area? So you could help by, you know, giving us some user insight as well. So those would be a couple of very important ways. And if you want to give me your contact information, I can put our editorial team in touch with you, and we'd love to hear from you and put you, you know, on our global stage. Yes, one over here.
Yes, please. Innovation, creativity, here, yes. Yes.
Oh, there, okay, great.
Innovation, creativity, 21st century skills, and so on. Nowadays, these terms are used as if they mean the same. Actually, innovation and creativity, could you elaborate a little bit? Some people would think gifted and talented, then creativity and creative. Could you elaborate? Thank you.
So that's an A+ question, and when I look at creativity, I see that as the human ability to generate new ideas. It doesn't mean that the ideas are necessarily any good, it just means that they're new, at least new to that person. It's inherent in how human beings are constructed. You know, we dream at night, we have ideas, new ideas. We daydream, although I'm sure nobody is daydreaming in here right now because this is a very serious group. So we can't help it, that's human. But not all of us are Mozart or Steve Jobs or, you know, Picasso. So talent and creativity are two different things, okay? Creativity simply means the ability to generate new ideas. And, you know, if this were a different kind of session, in about an hour, I could teach you 10 techniques for how to generate more ideas, individually and with other people. It's not an esoteric discipline. You know, it's something that is teachable, learnable, and I think should be taught in schools, frankly. Innovation, to me, is the whole process from the origination of the idea all the way to the realization of value. And the realization of value could mean that somebody buys the thing that you created, so it's commercial value, or it could be a societal value, having a more sustainable society or a safer city or a more just kind of setting, because innovation can work in a societal setting as well. So if you take that whole journey from the origination of the idea all the way to the realization of value from the idea, then all of the disciplines inside that I talked about are kind of the enablers of that journey. So I call the whole thing innovation, right? To me, innovation is creativity applied to some purpose to realize value. And in fact, that's the generally accepted definition. I take it a little bit further because I think innovation is so important these days because it helps us realize the future that we want. You know, Dubai is a very future-oriented society. As a matter of fact, you have a museum of the future. So innovation is about what gets us to that which we most desire, right? And to do that, we have to develop capabilities. It's not enough to just talk about it, right? It's the difference between saying that you want to play the piano and reading a book about the piano versus sitting down for 10 years and, you know, playing scales. You know, music is about mechanics, it's about practice, it's about discipline, right? It's about developing capabilities. Innovation is capabilities, right? It's just that mostly people talk about it and they say it's important, but the disconnect is they don't tell you anything about how to get it done because frankly, they don't know how to get it done, right? So it takes clinical knowledge of how people do it in Silicon Valley, in Hollywood, in government, in many different fields, distilling it down, packaging it for educators to have something like an EdgeMakers. Again, that's why we're so excited about it. Did I answer your question? Okay. Other questions? Yes, there's one here. Wait, I'm sorry, there's a mic coming. We need to hear you from the microphone.
In his latest book, Ken Robinson, Creative Schools.
Yeah, right.
He gives a simple definition of creativity and innovation. He says creativity is the generation of new ideas, whereas innovation is transforming these ideas into reality. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a similar definition. I mean, transforming into reality, you know, I think innovation happens when value is created. And just making something real may not be valuable. I would say his definition kind of stops around the 2/3 of the way into the whole journey, right? So making something real from an idea, if what he means is creating value, I would fully agree with that. If he means making something concrete, I would say there's still a step, which is the entrepreneurial step of taking what is real and turning it into something valuable. Right? Having a McDonald's hamburger is making something real, but until you sell 1 billion of them, you know, you don't really have a business, right? But I think he and I would probably agree. You know, we've interacted a fair amount in the past.
I want you to take a moment and just elaborate on your Saturday program.
On my what?
Your Saturday program.
Yes, okay.
That you were speaking about.
Sure.
Considering how do you roll it out, what does the program look like that you developed?
Sure. Well, right now, the Saturday program is it's a vision for Dubai. And what we have in mind is that we're just in the process now of talking with sponsors, with implementation partners, and identifying local pedagogical leads whom we can bring up to speed on the EdgeMakers teacher development system. And also there's some logistics because, you know, it might be books, it might be digital, it might be blended, you know, we have to see. So we're just in the process now of formulating the business plan for the Saturday program because we believe that that's a fast way to make EdgeMakers available to thousands of young people in Dubai and then in the broader region. The other thing is that a Saturday program can be connected to an academic program in a school. So, for example, depending on what is available curriculum-wise in a school, you could have a big project on sustainability and you could work on that project in terms of cultivating edge makers' skills and capabilities in the Saturday program. Or a sponsor could say, it's about the urban experience for the next year, right? And so the Saturday program and the academic programs can be correlated around a sponsor's interest, which might include innovation competitions and ultimately the use of Luminary as a way to bring in crowdsourced input from young edge makers from around the world who can be kind of a bear witness to what's going on here, and then ultimately vice versa. So I'm all ears in terms of your collective thinking about how to implement this. I mean, it seems to me at this point, we need to identify just 2 or 3 academic leads who can be part-time because Saturday is Saturday, right? We perhaps would be interested in finding, so in general, I think we would be interested in finding a few bellwether schools in Dubai who are interested in edge makers to get into a deeper conversation with them, because that has been the way that we've learned how to deploy in Brazil and in Colombia and in India. Parenthetically, I mean, in India, we have 100 of the top private schools in India now, after about less than a year's worth of deployment activity. And they are our reference accounts. We have similar dynamics going on in Brazil and in Colombia, which is our platform for Spanish-speaking Latin America. In the US, we have Riverdale Country School. Surprise, surprise, my alma mater. I'm on the board of trustees. I have an inside track there. But these are the relationships that really help us to fine-tune and calibrate what we're offering. So the Saturday program, I think, has a lot of potential because you don't need any infrastructure. You know, you set it up in a found location. It could be a mall, it could be an office building. You have your roving group of trainers, which can grow. And by the way, teachers who we have engaged in our professional development activities, for the most part, have this amazing sense of engagement with edge makers. It's not hard to persuade teachers to get involved because, among other things, the stuff that we teach is very interesting to them because they want to make positive change within the education system, within what they're doing. So what they teach is also what they'd like to learn, right? So we have to put together that cadre of people. We have to figure out some, you know, kind of left-brain logistical issues. We have very positive conversations going on with the government, obviously with KHDA, with some potential sponsors. So stay tuned. We'd love to do this. Yes.
Hi. You said that innovation is the new era, so it's for the new generation, but it's not really accessible to everyone. So not everyone has an opportunity to be part of like edge makers and to get those innovation techniques and everything. What do you think we can do about that?
What could we do about the access question?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the $64 question. I mean, right now, you know, on a percentage basis, the number of schools that do edge makers is pretty small. So we believe that Luminary and the digital system that I described briefly is the answer for access. And you know, you remember the picture of the young lady with the cell phone, right? So Luminary works in the following way, which is, let's say you want to take a trip, right? And you don't want to plan the trip yourself, so you go to a travel agent. You say, well, I don't have any money. Or you say, I have, you know, $100 and I have 5 days. And I'm interested in the great monuments of Europe. And then they'll plan an itinerary for you, which you are free to change, right? Or you go and you say, I have $100,000 and a year, and I want to do an extended tour of the world. It's a different kind of project, right? So Luminary is designed to be personalized. It's designed to be adaptive to your needs. And you know, you could go through it and be a semi-literate person in a refugee camp with a cell phone, or somebody whose parents are millionaires, and Luminary would welcome both of you to the same extent. So I think that this issue of access is something that we're trying to address by creating the digital on-ramp and mobile native on-ramp for young people around the world to be able to participate. I mean, right now, you can go to our website, you can contribute content, you can become a part of our community. But I think there are a lot more things that will be possible as Luminary comes on stream over the first quarter of next year, which is going to be a very exciting time for us. Yes, there's one over here. Is there a microphone?
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Muhammad Zahid Azim.
How do you do?
I am Principal Pakistan Education Academy. When we are talking about in the reference where more than 200 nationalities are around, and we are discussing the cultural relativism and also a lot of other things are to be considered. What do you think the main focus should not be on teaching training as far as the history is concerned, like if we see Socrates and then the Aristotle, how he got new ideas and some innovation is also traceable there. Similarly, if we see Hegel and then his student Karl Marx and then his students like Max Weber, when we see those chains when teachers were giving a room to student and the followers discuss something, to have something. What do you think for the innovation as far as this city is concerned and the UAE is concerned, is more focused on
more focused on what, sorry?
For innovation, we need teachers to be trained to give room to the.
So I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand your question. Is the question, should we focus on teacher development in Dubai?
Yes, particularly in the perspective of innovation.
Yes. So, okay, why am I interested in being in Dubai? It's because it is a world-class innovation and laboratory situation to be able to try something new like EdgeMakers, like the Edge Teachers professional development system, and like Luminary in a multicultural environment which is very finite in terms of the numbers of people. So there should be a tremendous amount of learning on everyone's part from being able to do this. And what we envision for the teacher development, professional development agenda is we have a basic, almost you could say, guerrilla training activity, right? So it's 2 sessions of half to 1 day. And we have materials, we have a very specific way of going through it. We train people on the digital platform. We have materials they can study. And then the teacher support approach has to do with telesupport and with live interventions of one kind or another. However, what we envision is a deeper tier of engagement with teachers where teachers can get a more intense professional development experience from us. This is probably in a year or 2, but we will have executive programs for teachers that will be in conjunction with teacher conferences. Teachers can get certified in Edge teaching. And the other thing is that Luminary, I didn't really make this point before, but I will now. Luminary is also for teachers. So there's a teacher zone within Luminary where they can share their own experiences. For example, you know, I used the creativity course and I added my own content, or I eliminated this but added that. That's really wonderful from our point of view. So we want to create a marketplace for teachers and a medium for them to exchange their experiences, which is why Luminary is so important to us.
Yeah, this has to be the last question.
Okay, so one more. It has to be a really good one. So you asked one already. If there's somebody else. I'm sorry? Oh, we can't take any more questions. So the last one was the good one. That was a good question. Okay, thank you.